For me, I've been through a lot of traumatic experiences in my life, so I had to actually evolve into a better person.
So, for questions for consideration and effective advocacy, why are the voices of the community so important? And think about best and worst case scenarios of communication by community members and whose partners and goals is to reduce the child injury and fatality maltreatment.
Families who are financially stable or better, like well off, can invest more time into their child because they don't have to constantly focus on what's going on the plate for dinner tonight. And it was a study between poor families and more financially well-off families, and it was like the financially well-off families, their children did better in school because their parents were constantly on their grades, because they had put them in tutors, or they had going up to the school for open house because they had the time to do that. And it's on the other hand, and even so, it's a mentality thing too, because if I grew up in poverty and I knew that my parents, not only did it's I pick up their behavior. And so if they're constantly worrying about when the next meal is going to come in, if they're constantly working, they grow this survival, that's the word I'm looking for. They grow this
mindset.
Yeah, exactly. The survivor mindset. And that's then imprinted onto me because that's what I observed as a child.
Sometimes we can get a little rowdy and very excited, and to the point where we forget that other people have points of views and other people have, a voice to say what they want to say. And so being able for us to regulate each other is a big plus, because I feel more impactful when I actually have people in my corner that would be like, yo, you said the wrong thing just now, and I feel like you need to tone it down a little bit. Right. So yeah.
I agree with Jaron, but one of the things that I would personally say, because I'm a strong believer that it starts with the parents when they were a child, I would say we need more healing programs for parents so that they can actually heal their inner child, because parents parent how parented, right? So
say that one more time. No, say that one more time for the people in the back.
Yeah, right.
Parents parent how parented. So
wow.
Basically we teach what we know.
Having your childhood experiences being I'm gonna mold my child into what I wanted to be, don't do that. Let your kids grow up to be what they want to be. Don't try and shape them into a miniature you. Don't do that. And what Jaron said earlier, I feel like if we tie some more community into raising children, it would go over smoothly,
child welfare system is long overdue for reform. So what exactly is your take on that matter?
What would it take to reform?
No, what is your take on it in terms of that?
I think we need to have a lot of improvements in this country, but also in this state. So I represent West Hartford, And I live only 6-7 minutes from here, but it's a world of difference, and that is not right. That is not fair. And it's telling to me on a daily basis that we need to make significant improvements. I think poverty is one of the major drivers, but we also have a legacy of racism that continues to impact our institutions and the decisions we make. And so I'd like to see a lot more investments in our communities, in schools, and community-based programs, so that we give all children in this state equal footing.
The question I have for you today is, what root causes and local conditions related to gun violence do you see most urgent or as a priority that needs to have attention at Hartford?
Well, first of all, Damari, thank you. Thank you for everything you and everybody else who's part of Raising Youth Voices is doing in our city. If we're going to change this, it's going to be up to you and our community, but especially young leaders in our community. Look, I think there's so many deep root causes of it. I mean, some of it is just deeply rooted in poverty and intergenerational poverty, but some of it is also more specific, exposure to trauma. I mean, having lost loved ones to gun violence, or having a direct experience gun violence. And one of the things we talked about today is that some of the folks who are most likely to be victims of crime or to be involved in violent crime are those who've been victims in the past, and that trauma and that fear continuing on. And so I think a big part of battling this is recognizing that it's not just a basketball program, it's not just a rec program, it's about recognizing that folks who've been exposed to that kind of violence and that kind of trauma need support, and it need healthcare support, need behavioral support, and one of the things that was announced today is that violence intervention will hopefully soon be treated and funded as a form of healthcare.
All right, Deja, the Youth and College Ambassador of Raising Youth Voices. We love to see it. Hey, man, I got one question for you. Why is it important to clean up your neighborhood?
It's important to clean up the neighborhood because this is where you live, this is where your kids live, this is where your neighbors live, and we need to come together as a community and keep our community safe. And a lot of these buildings is abandoned, yes, but keeping your street clean makes the community even better. That's it.
Parents and either us as older siblings, if you have a younger sibling, you need to be able to adapt to what's going on around you. And so I think that's like the big thing of not only parenting, but being a parental figure in general, whether that be biological or not. I think you just need to really learn the atmosphere and learn how times are changing, because when times change, the generations, their feelings, their mood, how they grow up, that changes as well. And I think that's a big thing, just not necessarily clinging to the old ways. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but because things are changing so much, parents have to learn how to change with them. And I think that's a part of the classes, the parenting classes. It's just learning how to adapt when things are changing so quickly.
Since, old people are always talking about, older people are always talking about, oh, I miss how it used to be, how we used to be so unified. You could look up, how to bring the community back, or even, using those experiences that you saw, that you want to bring back, and bringing it into the community, like Khalil said when he stopped those kids from fighting. And, just being there for the kids inside the community, knowing that there's people who actually care. That's what I feel like is missing inside of the community. People who, the feeling of people who actually care, and bringing that back into the community, as well as using the technology aspect of looking things up, so you have more knowledge and experience that you can actually bring. And tying those both together is, I feel like would be mostly effective.
This is Raising Youth Voices. This has been another session. You're going to see a lot during this whole thing. Y'all stay tuned. Yeah.